Hello everybody and welcome back to SkySaga Alpha 10. Today we're going to go through all of the new Lumostone. That is right, there is a whole bunch of new Lumostone in here behind me in Alpha 10 and we're going to have a look at all of that. So let's get started. Now, as I said, there is quite a lot of this stuff as you can see here. So what I've done is I've grouped it into sections. So we've got new inputs, well, all inputs I guess, all outputs, and then all kind of logic blocks down over that way. So we'll start over here with the inputs. Now I'm just going to quickly get out of here so we can't really see the linking. Now to start with, we're going to start with the basic stuff, the stuff that has been in the game for a little while, and that is pressure plates. Now in this alpha there are different types of pressure plate. There's the ardent pressure plate, and there's the Lumostone pressure plate, and then there's the large version, which is a 3x3 version. Now functionally all of these are the same thing. If you step on it, it creates a Lumostone signal, and that Lumostone signal goes to whatever output you have. Now, with all of these, you step on them, it takes like half a second or just a little bit of a second to turn on, and then when you step off, it takes about a second, a little bit less, to turn back off again. And that's the same for all three of these. Now, there is also a large ardent variant, but I don't know where you get that one at this point in time. The small ardent variant comes just pre-loaded, ready in your crafting machine, so you can just craft that at any time. The rest of these come from Camsha, the Lumostone trader. Now, most of you who have done the tutorial will have talked to Camsha. We will go to Camsha at the end of this video and just show you where Camsha actually is. Now, these were, like I said, all the inputs we had in the last alpha. This alpha they have expanded out with a switch and target sensors. Now, the switch is exactly what it sounds like. You hit E, it flicks down and turns on, and then it just stays there. And it stays perfectly on, just like that, until you come along and hit E again and turn the switch off. Now, there is also a cool little trick here, where if you connect any other input to a switch, and then stand on that input, the switch turns off. So if the switch gets a pulse from something or gets a Lumostone signal from something, it will turn off, which is quite useful for any of you who are building puzzles where you want to use switches to create a little, like, guess the combination puzzle, because you can have that all set up, and then when the person gets to the finish line, they step on a pressure plate, and that turns off all of the switches that they used to do their little puzzle. So that's the switch. The switch is really cool. The switch is going to have a huge effect on this game. There's loads of things that we can do with that. But there's also these two guys next to the switch, which are the target sensor. Now these things, basically you can hit these with whatever you like and they send a Lumostone output. And as you can see, they send their output very quickly indeed. Now, one of these guys is a destructible Lumostone target sensor, which means that if it's hit with a pickaxe or if it's kicked, it breaks, usually. It seems as though kicking is not strong enough to actually break this thing, but what it does mean is if you've got weapons, you can actually break it and it disappears for a whole second or so before reappearing in the world, which is kind of cool if you want to set up like an archery range or something where they have a limited amount of time between breaking the first target and breaking the last target to move on through with the rest of the thing. Then there's also the indestructible version, which does the same thing. It sends out a very short pulse when it gets hit, but of course the indestructible version is indestructible and can't be destroyed even when you hit it with pickaxes. You can also kick it to get the same effect, or hit it with a bow and arrow, or hit it with a sword. Anything that you can do to hit this thing will cause it to trigger. So there you go, those are the three new inputs, and there's a lot of stuff that we can do with these. I'm really excited. Next week's video will probably be something along those lines. Next up we have all of the outputs. So once again, there are a few of these, and I'm going to start with some of the simpler ones. So the Lumostone light we've already seen. Basically it gets a signal from somewhere and it turns on. Pretty simple, and it stays on until the signal disappears. So really nice, really easy. The next thing along here is the Lumostone dart turret. Now the dart turret, if we come and have a look around here, does actually have a hole facing away from us, and that is going to shoot a dart whenever it gets a Lumostone signal. So the first time it gets a signal, and it will then just keep shooting while it's got a Lumostone signal, and then when we stand off, it will depower and stop shooting. The next things we've got are platforms. So we've got a Lumostone platform 3x3 and 1x1. And we've also got a door. So these things basically act exactly the same way, but in different directions. So the door is a physical barrier to moving forwards, and the floors are physical barriers to moving down. And when we stand on a pressure plate, they get a signal, and they disappear when that signal is on. And then when that signal is off again, they reappear. So they're kind of like the opposite of a light, I guess. When they get a signal, they do nothing and they kind of disappear. The interesting thing to note is that the 1x1 takes a lot longer to fade out of the world than the 3x3 or even the door. So that's something to be wary of when you're building Lumostone contraptions in the future. If you've got just a tiny little hole somewhere in the ground that you want to use one of these guys with, you've got to make sure that your input is long enough length to actually make sure that that block disappears and comes back again. But we'll talk about how to get longer length over here. Moving on, we have the sound modules that we had in the last alpha. So these modules are the alarm, the timer, and the chime at the back here. So if we have a quick look at these, the alarm is pretty simple. It sends a good or bad alarm, depending on which one you set it up to. So all of these things, you click on something and click on them, and then they pull up a little list like this, and you've got good alarm or bad alarm. So we're going to leave that on bad alarm, and if we step on here, you see that it sounds a bad alarm. And it just does that once, as you can see. I keep standing on here and I'm not getting more than one alarm. The next one along is a one input timer circuit. So you stand on here and it just goes tick, 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 tick. And it's just going to keep ticking until such time as you stand off again, which is kind of useful and can be used for different timers and things, or can be used to set a sense of urgency to a puzzle, because the person running the puzzle knows by that sound that they are being timed. The next one is the chime. Now, the chime, I have set the chime on the ground and off the ground so that you can see that it absolutely makes no difference as to the sound it makes. So we'll go on here, and it plays a single note and does nothing else. So I'm just going to quickly show you the menu for these, because these have a number of different inputs. If we just click down here, you can see that I have a bunch of different notes that I can select, and clicking on one of these will connect the Lumostone line to that, and then it will play that note when it gets triggered. So here's the notes just quickly. So there's a selection of notes in there that you can use, and of course you can play two different notes at the same time by playing two different music blocks at the same time. Now, as I said before, wherever you put these things are going to make the same sound. All that they are dependent on is just simply the actual connection that you connect them up to. Finally, up here we have two things that are a little bit harder to get. I'm going to talk about the little cage over here first. So this cage is an animal cage. Now, the animal cage you can get from a trader that is directly across from Camtra in the city of First Light, and these animal cages are amazing. On a public island, they spawn animals. Now, that means when they don't have a Lumostone signal, they just kind of spawn the animal in, and then when the animal dies, they wait a few seconds and they respawn the animal, which is all cool and everything. But these things are way more powerful than that, because they can be hooked up to Lumostone signals. So you can hook them up to pressure plates or anything you like, and put that into here, and you'll see it hooks up quite nicely. Now, what this does is when it's hooked to Lumostone, it stops randomly or automatically spawning the animal and waits to spawn the animal until it's got a Lumostone signal. And when it's got a Lumostone signal, it will then spawn the animal. And once again, if the Lumostone signal holds and the animal dies, then it will wait a few seconds and then respawn the animal. The coolest thing about all of this, though, is it will also act as an output. So we can grab that and output it to this note block over here, and as you can see, that output works as well. So this line will be powered as long as that animal is alive, which means you can build traps and puzzles where you actually have to kill all of the animals in the area before you can move on, because the system will know when animals are alive and when animals are dead by how many Lumostone lines are on at the same time. The last little output down here that I have, there are one or two more outputs, but they're a little bit harder to get your hands on, so I didn't include them in this video. But this output down here I showed off very quickly in my Alpha 10 pre-release video. It is a fireworks launcher. Now, to get hold of this, you need to find Mischief Powder, and then you need to find Knick-Knack, and then you need to find a fireworks factory, and then you need to throw fireworks in the City of First Light, and then talk to Camtra, and Camtra will give you the recipe for this thing. So it's kind of long and kind of involved. Check out my video that's linked in the description to see me go through and do all of those things to get this recipe, but it is really cool. You add a firework into the little launcher down here, and then when you stand on a pressure plate, it fires one of those out. Now, the cool thing about this is that it's completely repeatable. It just takes a firework simply as a template for the type of firework you want to place in. So you don't need to craft a whole stack of fireworks and leave them in there. All you need to do is craft one that you want to keep firing over and over again, and every time it gets a Lumostone signal, it will fire out another firework. And of course, you can keep that Lumostone signal going, and it seems to be, there you go, it will kind of fire them on occasion and just keep going as long as that Lumostone signal is continuing to occur. So there you go, that is all or most of the outputs that we now have here in SkySaga Alpha 10. Finally, we're going to move on to the logic. So these are all of the logic blocks along here. Now, logic blocks on their own don't do anything. Logic blocks are a way to manipulate a Lumostone signal as it travels through the world. So what we can see here is I've got an input, which is a pressure plate, hooked up through one of these logic gates and into the lamp. And as you can see, the Lumostone lamp is on despite the fact that the pressure plate is off. That's because this guy at the front here is a NOT gate. Now, NOT gates we've had in Alpha 9, and they are again here in Alpha 10, so they work really well. So basically, a NOT gate inverts a signal. When it has no signal on this side, it pushes a signal out the front, and when it gets a positive signal on this side, it sends out no signal out the front. So it basically just inverts whatever signal it gets given, which is really cool and really, really useful in a lot of cases. The next one down here is an AND gate. Now, an AND gate has two inputs. We'll just quickly break this line and reattach it, and you can see it has an A and a B. Now, an AND gate is called an AND gate because both A and B need to be on at the same time for the output to turn on. So as you can see here, we've got the NOT gate attached to the A side, which is the top line, and we've got the pressure plate attached to the B side. So when we stand on this pressure plate, both the A is giving a signal and the B is getting a signal, and so the output turns on. But if we go kind of like this, you'll see that it waits until this signal gets back on before turning that light on. So it needs both the top and the bottom at the same time to turn the signal on. The next four along here are simply delays. So all they do is they add an extra little bit of signal to any line. So when you step on a pressure plate and step back off again, when the pressure plate stops sending out a signal, this guy is a 0.5 second delay, then a 1 second delay, then a 5 second delay, and a 10 second delay. Basically, they wait that length of time before letting the signal go again. So if we do this on a 10-second one, it will be a lot easier to see. So we're going to stand on here. The pressure plate lets go now. And that is not right. Hang on. Oh, I've hooked this up backwards, I think. My 10-second delay does not seem to be working for some reason, so we'll do it with the 5-second delay. Here you go. And as you can see, that is off, but the light is still on for another 5 whole seconds. Once the 5-second timer runs out, then the light turns off as well. So these just add a little bit of a delay. They add extra stuff to the signal. And of course, you can stack these together. So if we really wanted to, we could take that and put it into the 1-second delay, put the 1-second delay into the 5-second delay. And so what would happen is I stand on here, all three of these are going to turn on, and then when we stand off, this one is going to turn off at half a second after, this is going to turn off at 1.5 seconds after, and this is going to turn off at 6.5 seconds after. So here we go. Once, yep, there we go. And then this guy needs to go all the way through all of those delays before finally turning off, just like that. So of course you can stack delays as long as you like, and just as many of them as you like to get longer and longer signals out of these things, depending on what you need to do. Although there are better ways of holding signals for a long period of time, especially if you want to hold them until a player does something else. Now, that's where we get to these things at the back here. These are really cool and really simple. So the latch is one that we had in Alpha 9. It has two inputs. One is on and one is off. So the on one is the front one here. When you stand or send a signal into the on, the latch turns on, and then we can get away from that latch. And as you can see, this thing here is going to stay on just as long as we want it to, basically. The latch is going to hold that on until such time as we step on the back pressure plate, because the back pressure plate back here is connected to the off of this latch. So if we just have a quick look, I'll show you what I mean. When we connect up to here, we've got an on and an off. So turning it on turns the latch on, and then the latch will just stay on until such time as you hit the off. So as you can see, it's still going on and still going on and still going on, and then we go over here and we hit the off and it will turn off. Beautiful. Easy, nice and simple. The latches are really, really cool and really powerful. But I almost think that they have been surpassed for the most powerful Lumostone gate by this guy. This is the Lumostone toggle. Now, in my opinion, this is going to be one of the most useful logic gates that you can get. So the Lumostone toggle is really, really cool. Basically, if it's off and you step on the pressure plate, it is going to turn on. And if it's on and you step on the pressure plate, it's going to turn off. So it's going to toggle its behavior from on to off, depending on what it's doing. So here we go. So now I've turned it on by stepping on that pressure plate once, and it's now going to stay on and just continue to stay on until such time as we step on the pressure plate again. And when we step on the pressure plate again, it toggles and turns off again. So this is really cool and really, really useful. We were making these in Alpha 9 by using the latch and a combination of other gates around it. Now we have it as a single gate, and that is really, really powerful. As you can see, this thing is pretty quick, so we can kind of just like keep going, keep turning it off and turning it on again, and it just keeps up with absolutely everything we're doing, and it is magical and really, really powerful. And I want to thank the devs for this one, because that is going to help us a lot with a whole bunch of different builds that we're going to do here in SkySaga Alpha 10. Next up, we have the pass-through, or I can't actually remember what they call this, Lumostone relay. So the Lumostone relay is actually pretty simple. All it does is pass a signal through. It doesn't actually do anything to manipulate the circuit in any way, shape, or form. And the reason that this is useful is because we can use this to restructure circuits and change the way they look. So if I grab hold of this block and place it down over here, and then throw my wand back open again, you can see that now the line from this pressure pad is linked all the way through the Lumostone relay and all the way back again. Now, some of you may not realize that this is actually really, really useful, because what it means is that we can neaten the wiring that we do here in SkySaga Alpha 10. We can kind of reroute lines around things rather than having them go through other blocks and kind of make confusing messes of circuits. So while it does absolutely nothing to the actual signal going through, it's going to be very, very useful when you start building complicated, huge Lumo webs where there are Lumo lines going here, there, and everywhere, because you could use these relays to kind of hook things around the edges, and you can also use them really, really coolly. You can actually use them to connect multiple different inputs to multiple different outputs very, very easily. So if I hook up all of my outputs, or I can hook up this relay to all of my outputs, and then I hook up 3 or 4 of these inputs into this guy, I have done a lot less work to hook all of my inputs up to those outputs than if I individually went through and hooked up the outputs one by one into each of the outputs, if I hooked up each of the inputs one by one into each of the outputs I wanted them to control. So as you can see, right now, I've now got control over all of those lights from 3 different places without even really having to work too hard on that, which is really, really good and really nice. So that's going to be quite powerful, despite the fact that it doesn't actually do a lot to the overall web, and it doesn't manipulate the signal in any way. So there you go, that is all of the brand new Lumostone here in SkySaga Alpha 10. There is a lot of stuff here that I've got so many ideas. There are going to be floods of tutorials coming, because there is just loads and loads and loads we can do with this. So I hope you guys have enjoyed that one, and I will see you in the next video.